Welcome back to the last Behind the Screams vlog installment of the Lovecraft story, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. This is part 4 of 4 parts, the final part, and this is Behind the Screams part 1 of, well, let's make this even more complicated. Okay, so this is Behind the Screams number 6 in the overall Timeless Terrors catalogue, which we began this Behind the Screams, behind the scenes footage maybe 6 weeks ago. I don't know, I can't remember. 1 month, 2 months, here or there. And I just thought it was an extra, something extra to add to the channel, so that the viewer, listener can see what it is, what it takes to narrate a story in the public domain, in my case, horror. Also, maybe more importantly, it's a little rebellion against AI narration. Because for me, stories are inherently human and should continue that way. The stories are a magic thing. And for me, to listen to AI narration, which I don't, strict rule, is listening to a dead story. Stories are living things passed down through the generations. And basically, AI narration is just sputtering out what is fed into it. There is no feeling behind it. And don't let yourself be fooled by that. Rant over. I wasn't expecting that. We just went down market there all of a sudden. We're here to narrate the final part of the Lovecraft story. Okay, I continue with my hay fever, which has become a regular feature in the Timeless Terror series. Hopefully for not longer. Hopefully for not long more. Let's see. This morning, I narrated the last part, well, half an hour. I was here in the cabin at 7 a.m., a little before, and I got about 35 minutes of narration. Well, when that is edited down, probably 25 minutes or 20 minutes. Maybe 20, no. Miscalculation, not the first time. I would say 25 to 30 minutes. It's quite solid reading this morning. I didn't have the heart to go on camera and record it because the hay fever was bad and it was ugly. And there was a lot of spluttering, sputtering, and, well, all sorts of sound effects that you don't need to listen to on Monday morning. Okay, now today I have my coffee. Let's continue. Okay, so we continue maybe where I left off from. There was a break, and this is where we're continuing with part. It's actually chapter 5, the last chapter, and it's long. I think probably just as long as chapter 4, probably an hour and something of narration after editing. By the way, now that I think of it, I'm working on a novel, my own novel, called Mummy, and it is part of the Old Castle series. All those novels in the Old Castle series, it's not you don't have to read them in chronological order. Basically, they all take place in the fictional town of Old Castle, which is, I would say, a conglomerate or a hybrid version of my own town, Newcastle West, County Limerick, Ireland. And I do use the same locations in the town, changing names, obviously, and but basically what you read in those novels, any locations that you see, any shops, any streets, they all exist, but under, well, actually the street names are the same names, now that I think of it, but the shop names have been changed. Perhaps for legal reasons, or I don't even know if I don't know anything about that, but I changed them to suit the novel. And probably ultimately as well, maybe legal reasons. I don't know. There's always somebody out there to grab somebody, whatever that means. But I think you understand what I mean. You have to get permission and all this kind of thing to use actual place names. As far as I know, I'm not up in the law of literature. Sorry, but what I'm getting at is that during the week, I would like to narrate the first chapter of Mummy. It's something I'm itching to do. And also, I need to carry on with that novel. Because first and foremost, I'm a writer, and second, a narrator. That's the way I see it, at least. Maybe other people who have read my books would say the opposite, or neither. But that's how I feel. So the novel is called Mummy, and it revolves around a mother and a son. They have a funeral home business, and the son is slightly odd. Yes, he's got some... I'm not sure what it is, but he has some ailment of the brain. Right now I can't remember the exact, what's the correct wording, but I never put a tag on what he suffers from, but there's just something missing. Maybe empathy, feeling, and he doesn't understand like other kids his age understands. Also, he has grown up in a very secluded atmosphere. It's just his mother and him, and he in the novel we begin when he is maybe I see him as 15 or 16 years old, and he has begun to work. He's begun to prep the bodies for the funeral with his mother, and his mother is she's probably a tyrant and somewhat of a dictator, and everything has to be done correctly and her way when preparing a corpse. Ultimately, it's a corpse for the celebration of funeral. But it turns very dark very quickly, and we are seeing this story unfold from the son's, Joseph is his name, and there's a reason for that, from his eyes, from his skewered vision, let's just put it that way. And it's a Gothic tale told in modern times, but I have tried to enhance the Gothic feel by creating specific situations in the book where, you know, he cannot have lanterns on the walls and he's a candlelit house because it's just not realistic in a modern world. But you can create a situation where he has to use those things, and all that comes together to create what I hope is a very dark atmosphere. I would say disturbing and unsettling, of those two words. That's what I do best. I don't do gore, I don't do gruesome violence. Not interested in that. Never was, never will be. I prefer looming dread and ultimately a great story. At least that's how I see it. Let's continue here. In another moment, he was hastily filling the burnt-out lamps from an oil supply he had previously noticed, and when the room was bright again, he looked about to see if he might find a lantern for some further exploration. For racked though he was with horror, his sense of grim purpose was still uppermost, and he was firmly determined to leave no stone unturned in his search for the hideous facts behind Charles Ward's bizarre madness. Failing to find a lantern, he chose the smallest of the lamps to carry, also filling his pockets with candles and matches, and taking with him a gallon can of oil, which he proposed to keep for reserve use in whatever hidden laboratory he might uncover beyond the terrible open space, with its unclean altar and nameless covered wells. This story is really beginning to interest me now. To traverse that space again would require his utmost fortitude, but he knew it must be done. Fortunately, neither the frightful altar nor the open shaft was near the vast cell-indented wall, which bounded the cavern area, and whose black mysterious archways would form the next goals of a logical search. I'm slightly caught up in my chest with the hay fever, and I find myself reaching for oxygen at times. So Willett went back to that great pillared hall of stench and anguished howling, turning down his lamp to avoid any distant glimpse of the hellish altar, or of the uncovered pit with the pierced stone slab beside it. Most of the black doorways led merely to small chambers, some vacant and some evidently used as storerooms, and in several of the latter he saw some very curious accumulations of various objects. One was packed with rotting and dust-draped bales of spare clothing, and the explorer thrilled when he saw that it was unmistakably the clothing of a century and a half before. In another room he found numerous odds and ends of modern clothing, as if gradual provisions were being made to equip a large body of men. But what he disliked most of all were the huge copper vats which occasionally appeared, these and the sinister incrustations upon them. He liked them even less than the weirdly figured leaden bowls, whose ruins retained such obnoxious deposits, and around which clung repellent odours perceptible above even the general noisomeness of the crypt. When he had completed about half the entire circuit of the wall, he found another corridor like that from which he had come, and out of which many doors opened. This he proceeded to investigate, and after entering these rooms of medium size and of no significant contents, he came at last to a large oblong apartment, whose business-like tanks and tables, furnaces and modern instruments, occasional books and endless shelves of jars and bottles proclaimed it, indeed, the long-sought laboratory of Charles Ward, and no doubt of old Joseph Kerwin before him. I used to have a little animal living in the roof of my cabin. I don't think it's there anymore. Whether it was bird or beast, I'll never know. Mystery. Can't beat it. After lighting the 3 lamps, which he found filled and ready, Dr. Willett examined the place and all its appurtenances with the keenest interest, noting from the relative quantities of various reagents on the shelves that young Ward's dominant concern must have been with some branch of organic chemistry. On the whole, little could be learned from the scientific ensemble, which included a gruesome-looking dissecting table, so that the room was really rather a disappointment. Among the books was a tattered old copy of Borellus in black letter, and it was weirdly interesting to note that Ward had underlined the same passage whose marking had so perturbed good Mr. Merritt at Kerwin's farmhouse more than a century and a half before. That older copy, of course, must have perished along with the rest of Curwen's occult library in the final raid. 3 archways opened off the laboratory, and these the doctor proceeded to sample in turn. From his cursory survey, he saw that 2 led merely to small storerooms, but these he canvassed with care, remarking the piles of coffins in various stages of damage and shuddering violently at 2 or 3 of the few coffin plates he could decipher. There was much clothing also stored in these rooms, and several new and tightly nailed boxes which he did not stop to investigate. Most interesting of all, perhaps, were some odd bits, which he judged to be fragments of old Joseph Curwen's laboratory appliances. These had suffered damage at the hands of the raiders, but were still partly recognizable as the chemical paraphernalia of the Georgian period. Okay, there's a break there. Throat not good today. The third archway led to a very sizable chamber entirely lined with shelves and having in the centre a table bearing 2 lamps. These lamps Willett lighted, and in their brilliant glow studied the endless shelving which surrounded him. Some of the upper levels were wholly vacant, but most of the space was filled with small odd-looking leaden jars of 2 general types, one tall and without handles like a Grecian lekythos, or oil jug, and the other with a single handle and proportion like a phaleron jug. I have no idea what those are. All had metal stoppers, and were covered with peculiar-looking symbols moulded in low relief. In a moment the doctor noticed that these jugs were classified with great rigidity. All the lekythoi being on one side of the room, with a large wooden sign reading Custodes above them, and all the phalerons on the other, correspondingly labelled with a sign reading Materia. Each of the jars or jugs, except some on the upper shelves that turned out to be vacant, bore a cardboard tag with a number apparently referring to a catalogue, and Willett resolved to look for the latter presently. For the moment, however, he was more interested in the nature of the array as a whole, and experimentally opened several of the lekythoi and phalerons at random with a view to a rough generalization. The result was invariable. Both types of jar contained a small quantity of a single kind of substance, a fine dusty powder very lightweight and of many shades of dull neutral colour. To the colours which formed the only point of variation there was no apparent method of disposal, and no distinction between what occurred in the lekythoi and what occurred in the phalerons. A bluish-grey powder might be by the side of a pinkish-white one, and anyone in a phaleron might have its exact counterpart in lekythos. The most individual feature about the powders was their non-adhesiveness. Willett would pour one into his hand, and upon returning it to its jug would find that no residue whatever remained on his palm. The meaning of the 2 signs puzzled him, and he wondered why this battery of chemicals was separated so radically from those in glass jars on the shelves of the laboratory proper. Custodes, materia, that was the Latin for guards, and material. Not sure if I'm pronouncing those right. My gut instinct says that I'm not. Respectively, and then there came a flash of memory as to where he had seen that word, guards, before, in connection with this dreadful mystery. It was, of course, in the recent letter to Dr. Allen, purporting to be from old Edward Hutchinson, and the phrase had read, There was no need to keep the guards in shape, and eating off their heads, and it made much to be found in case of trouble, as you too well know. What did this signify? But wait, was there not still another reference to guards in this matter which he had failed wholly to recall when reading the Hutchinson letter? And back in the old non-secretive days, Ward had told him of the Eleazar Smith diary recording the spying of Smith and Whedon on the Kirwan farm. And in that dreadful chronicle there had been a mention of conversations overheard before the old wizard betook himself wholly beneath the earth. There had been, Smith and Whedon insisted, terrible colloquies wherein figured Kirwan, certain captives of his, and the guards of those captives. Those guards, according to Hutchinson or his avatar, had eaten their heads off, so that now Dr. Allen did not keep them in shape, and if not in shape, how save as the salts to which it appears his wizard band was engaged in reducing as many human bodies or skeletons as they could. So that was what these lekatoi contained. The monstrous fruit of unhallowed rites and deeds, presumably won or cowed to such submission as to help when called up by some hellish incantation, in the defence of their blasphemous master, of the questioning of those who were not so willing. Willett shuddered at the thought of what he had been pouring in and out of his hands, and for a moment felt an impulse to flee in panic from that cavern of hideous shelves with their silent and perhaps watching sentinels. Then he thought of the materia in the myriad phaleron jugs on the other side of the room. Salts, too. And if not the salts of guards, then the salts of what? God! Could it be possible that here lay the mortal relics of half the Titan thinkers of all the... Could it be possible that here lay the mortal relics of half the Titan thinkers of all the ages, snatched by supreme ghouls from crypts, where the world thought them safe, and subject to the beck and call of madmen who sought to drain their knowledge for some still wilder and whose ultimate effect would concern, as poor Charles had hinted in his frantic note, all civilization, all natural law, perhaps even the fate of the solar system and the universe. And Marinus Bicknell Willett had sifted their dust through his hands. Then he noticed a small door at the farther end of the room, and calmed himself enough to approach it and examine the crude sign chiselled above. It was only a symbol, but it filled him with vague spiritual dread, for a morbid dreaming friend of his had once drawn it on paper, and told him a few of the things it means in the dark abyss of sleep. It was a sign of Koth, that dreamers see fixed above the archway of a certain black tower, standing alone in twilight. And Willett did not like what his friend Randolph Carter had said of its powers. Randolph Carter, our old friend. We've done that story too on the channel a few months ago. It's fun to see familiar names, fictional and real. But a moment later, he forgot the sign as he recognized a new acrid odor in the stench-filled air. This was a chemical rather than animal smell, and came clearly from the room beyond the door. And it was unmistakably the same odor which had saturated Charles Ward's clothing on the day the doctors had taken him away. So it was here that the youth had been... No. So it was here that the youth had been interrupted by the final summons. He was wiser than old Joseph Kirwan, for he had not resisted. I'm going to stop there, tell you a small anecdote. I'm just thinking about it right now. on Saturday night I went to no, yeah, on Saturday night I went to the cinema and I watched a film that you have to see. If you are into horror on any level, then Hokum. It's an Irish production, actually filmed not too far from where I'm originally from in Ireland, Cork, County Cork. More specifically, Skibbereen, beautiful area of Ireland in the southwest. And Adam Scott is the main actor. You might know him from, he's an American actor, a very good actor. It's nice to see him in a leading role. Normally he plays second fiddle to the lead. He's very good. Actually, all the acting in that film is very good. Hokum. Writer-director, Damien McCarthy. I thought I would do the right thing and go to see the film, and it's been something I've been looking forward. I didn't want to watch it in Spanish. I prefer to watch it in original version, but in my local cinema, only very popular blockbusters are available in original version. But nevertheless, I purchased a big bag of sweets and I sat down in a corner all by myself, happy as Larry, whoever Larry was. And I really enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the film so much, and this is why I'm telling this story, that when it finished, I was just really taken back by the whole thing. And I was still living in this secluded hotel in the southwest of Ireland in a forest, in the woods. And this hotel is like a microcosm, there's a great sense of place in the film. And I was completely blown away by the film. I just loved it on every level. I was so taken with the film that when I got home, I realized that I'd left my wallet at the cinema on the seat next to me. Now, if you want to know what I'm like, then this is me. What you see on camera, narrating and telling little anecdotes, is just part of it. But the real me is the guy who left the wallet in the cinema. Panic. I arrived at my gate. I didn't even get out of the car. I looked for my wallet, no wallet. Retraced my steps. I didn't have many steps. I went from the cinema to my car. That horrible sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, that sickening, like nauseous, a wave of nausea washed over me. I turned the car around. At this time it's midnight. So I turned the car around, drove off, probably breaking the speed limit in my local area. Hopefully I find out about that if I did. I don't think I did. We'll see. Anyway, as I was driving, I called it's a shopping centre, and this cinema is in the shopping centre. And thankfully, somebody answered. I couldn't believe it. It was practically midnight, and someone answered. And me panicking, couldn't speak English or Spanish, was like fumbling through my words. I have enough Spanish to get by here. I'm here in Spain a long time, and I have enough to defend myself, as you would say. As they say here in Spain, which is a strange expression. But I have enough Spanish to get by, surely. But speaking on the phone Saturday night, it was as if I had just landed at Madrid airport. All my Spanish went out the window, and I was trying to get my words out where I'd left because I knew exactly which screening it was, which screen. It was screen 5, and it was row 10. But I kept saying row, and the guy on the phone was. Sorry, just give me a second. Anyway, I was panicking. And by the time I arrived at the cinema, everything was in darkness. But then I could see at the end of the long hallway where the screens are, divided on the left and right, I saw a security guard and the cinema manager coming out of screen 5, and they asked me my name. I saw they had a wallet in their hands. They asked me my name. I told them my name. They handed me over my wallet. I was never so thankful and relieved in all my life. You know why? Because that's not the first time I've done it. I think they probably know me by now. The last time it was my glasses. I don't use these glasses. I use these glasses for long distance driving, road signs. I don't need them for screens or reading or anything like that. But I left my glasses and they were under the... Actually, technically, I forgot my glasses. And Saturday night I forgot my wallet. Next time I forget my head, I'll be calling ahead, pardon the pun, and I'll be explaining where I left my head. Sorry, I left my head in screen 7, row 8, and it's number 2, the number 2 seat. Yes, you will find my head right there. Just the head.